If you've been watching this channel, then you've seen earlier presentations which have been looking at why we should believe in God and why we should believe in Jesus Christ. Now we're going to take a look at the Gospels and whether they are reliable records of the things that they describe. Now, one of the clearest pieces of evidence that shows the Gospels are an accurate record is this correspondence between what the Gospel accounts say and archaeology. Now, these are the words of the Apostle Peter, and he's telling us that the apostles give an account of what Jesus said and did as eyewitnesses. Their accounts are eyewitness accounts. The question then is how we can show that that's the case. It isn't the only place where that claim is made. All sorts of people make that claim within the New Testament. Here are some other examples, 15 of them here. I ran out of space, so there could have been more. But the point is that the New Testament is full of claims for eyewitness accounts, that they are talking about things that the people who wrote them have seen themselves. Occasionally, skeptics will say that isn't the case, but they're wrong. The Bible contains many, many statements about eyewitness accounts. So let's think, how are we going to show that these claims are correct? And one way is to look at the archaeological record. So the basic principle is this: the Bible contains descriptions of people, of places, of events, of customs, and some of these leave archaeological traces. So we can then see what the archaeologists have discovered and compare the two. And by finding places where both of them give a witness to the same thing, we can see whether the Bible is a reliable witness of what's happening. So let's go on and look at some examples. First one is the example of a person. And this particular person, well, you can see the inscription that is left up here. And if you look, you can see a name written on the inscription. It's an inscription in Caesarea, and it gives the name of someone who appears in the Gospels. Let's just try and make it a bit clearer. That's the reconstructed wording there. So the letters in black, we actually have the ones in grey are conjectural. We're working out what is likely to have been there. So what it says is Caesarians, Caesarea, probably it might be Munis city, or Nautis, the sailors, but it's then a Tiberium, a temple to the Emperor Tiberius. And it says Pontius Pilate, the prefect of Judea, and then dedicated, probably. It might be refecit, which will be restored, but probably it's dedicated. So Pontius Pilate existed. Here he is. He's left his inscription. There are coins from Pontius Pilate as well. And we know that Pontius Pilate was a character in the New Testament. He's mentioned by a couple of other writers outside the New Testament. But he was the governor, the Roman governor of Judea, who ended up condemning Jesus to death on the cross. So we've got a detail in archaeology which matches our picture in the scriptures, in the gospel records. Right. Different one. This is a rather more convincing example, and it's part of an account of a miracle where Jesus turned water into wine. If you look in John chapter 2 verse 6, you'll see that the water had been stored in jars before it was turned into wine by Jesus. And the little detail that's there that's important is that it says they were stone water jars. So there were water jars that were made not out of pottery, but out of stone. Now, almost any archaeological dig in the Mediterranean region will turn up many large earthenware containers which were used for water or for grain or for any of the things that people wanted. They're called pithoi. There are lots and lots of them, but they're virtually never made out of stone. Reason, stone jars need to be turned on a lathe rather than made on a potter's wheel, and they're very expensive as a result. But it turns out, here's an example from a house that was in Jerusalem and destroyed in 70 AD, was burned. And here you can see 2 stone water jars and the remains of 3 pottery ones. The reason that the stone jars were used was under Jewish law, they were more resistant to ritual uncleanness. If they became unclean, they could be cleaned out and then used again, whereas the pottery jars had to be broken and disposed of. So there was a reason for having stone jars where there were a very large number of observant Jews all living together. And that was the case in Judea and in Galilee. So here in this passage, the fact that there are stone water jars means we've got a little tiny detail, an insignificant detail in the text, which is confirmed by archaeology. Here's another one. Another example of a miracle. Jesus is in a house, he's teaching, and the house is absolutely packed full of people, so that when some more men come along with a man who's paralyzed, they can't get in. There's just too many people in the way and they can't get through. So they go up onto the roof and they let the paralyzed man down through the roof, and Jesus heals him. Now, again, there's a little detail here, and that's the fact that the roof had tiles. Now, it was quite common, especially in this part of the world, for roofs to be made by covering the ceiling, or what we call it, with branches, and then putting clay on top of that and letting the clay bake until it was in the sun, until it was waterproof. And but in the area around Galilee, that wasn't what happened. This is it's called Gamla. It was built sometime just before the birth of Jesus by Herod the Great. It's a sort of fortified village. It was destroyed by the Romans in something like 68 AD and never rebuilt. So it's a sort of time capsule of what houses were like at the time of Jesus. And you can see there's where the village was. There's the former synagogue, and this is the wall of the village with the tower at the top. And what they found looking at that was that the houses were tiled with things looking like slate, but actually made out of basalt. So these tiles were on the roof, and there's a description of the kind of custom they had in Galilee. Capernaum isn't far away from there, and it's in the same kind of geology. There's another building. This is it was once the Pool of Bethesda. The Pool of Bethesda is described in the Gospel of John, and it's a pool with 5 colonnades, or a system of pools with 5 colonnades. And the critics in the 19th century were saying that couldn't possibly happen. That's an obvious mistake in the Gospels, because it looks just like a pagan healing sanctuary, and you wouldn't allow something like that in a holy city like Jerusalem. Well, then they dug and they found it. The pool itself would have been down there, or just about see it. This would have been one of the colonnades, and here we've got remains of a kind of temple and some minor baths. And here's a reconstruction by Lane Rittmeyer. And you can see there it is. Now the pool's inside. Here are the 5 porticos. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, and there's the 5th one there. And we were looking at this area, looking at it from that direction. And just as it said in the Gospel, 5 colonnades, here they are, the 5 colonnades that the archaeologists have turned up. So John is accurately describing the kind of place that Jesus would have been in and seen and walked through. Another one. This one is in Capernaum, and you'll see an account of a healing. In this case, it's of a centurion's servant, and the centurion sends messengers to Jesus. They are important people in the village, and they say, please help this man because he built us our synagogue. Imagine they mean that he paid for the synagogue to be built. And that means it must have been built only a short time before Jesus was there, because the centurion is still serving in the same town he was in when he paid for the synagogue to be built. Well, this is the remains of Capernaum, and there's a synagogue seen by tourists a lot. Problem is that this nice white stone synagogue was actually built 2 or 3 centuries after the time of Jesus. But we're not finished yet, because you can see that underneath it there is the remains of another building, another synagogue. And you can see that the two don't quite match up with one another. Here they're exactly one on top of another, but over that end there's a bit of a ledge, so the two aren't quite on the same axis. Synagogue's supposed to point towards Jerusalem, or these were, and the two lots of builders had slightly different calculations as to what exactly was the correct direction. So there's this black basalt synagogue that was there rather earlier than the white one, which is standing on top of it. So how do we date it? Well, they dug a trench. There's the trench. They dug it down into the foundations of the black synagogue, both synagogues, and you can see here's the black stuff at the bottom. And the builders had done what a lot of builders do all over the world. When they had rubbish, they threw it into the hole before they covered it up. And in fact, they also lost some small coins down there, which wasn't worth getting out of the muck and mortar. So they just left them there. And from that, we can date the time the synagogue was built. And believe it or not, it comes out to be just before the time of Jesus, just a few years before. So that synagogue was built at exactly the right time. Now, the Gospels are full of little archaeological details like these. Why is it important? Well, it's important because in 70 AD, well, no, it wasn't, it was in 66 AD, the war started, and the Romans and the Jews started to fight one another, and it took them until 70 AD to capture Jerusalem and destroy it. And in fact, the last strongholds fell in 73 AD. This is taken from one of them, and there's a picture of a Roman camp where the Roman soldiers were camping while they besieged Masada, which is where the pictures are taken from. And it was a well-known fact that Vespasian, or he was the emperor and the general at the start, the emperor at the end, had conquered the Jews. And there it is on one of his coins: Judea captured, Judea has been taken captive. And that meant that the Romans removed the population, they scattered them through the Roman Empire, mainly as slaves, and the people who settled there a long time afterwards didn't even speak the same language. They didn't have the same names for things, they didn't follow the same customs, and what had happened was entirely forgotten. So the fact that the archaeology is accurate shows that the people who wrote the Gospels knew exactly what was going on, and they're remembering what happens, and they're getting even the tiny details correct all the way through, even though they were living in different parts of the empire maybe when the Gospels were written. We can go on, because there's evidence of predictions of the future in the archaeology. Here are 2 parallel accounts of what Jesus was saying. As they came out of the temple, the disciples said, "Look, teacher, what wonderful stones, what wonderful buildings. Look at this." And Jesus makes a prediction. He says that there'll be a time coming when there won't be left one stone on another that won't be thrown down. Okay, that's what the temple looked like. That was the actual temple itself on top. And it's built on a kind of platform, which is man-made, and that's held up by other walls at the bottom. But it's the temple that Jesus predicts would be completely destroyed. Okay, let's go to what the archaeologists discover. What we have here, let's go back. We're looking at this area down here, this corner on this wall here, and you see this arch. Well, that's the spring of that arch there on the edge of the wall, and you can see even the platform that the temple was built on has tremendously large stones. This lady here, I know her, she's reasonably tall, and you can see that the stone next to her, that stone's got to be good 5 feet tall. These are magnificent stones, and this is just a platform on which the temple was built. Now, it's very rare for buildings to be so badly destroyed that there's not one left standing on another. Archaeologists find stones one on another all the time. That's how they know what's there. There's a wall here, wasn't part of the temple, and there it is, still in existence. And of course, this platform wall, there it is, still in existence. The archaeologists can find it. It was buried but being excavated now. But the temple was destroyed. The whole place was destroyed by fire. That didn't knock the stones down, it just destroyed the city. And then later on, the stones were indeed thrown down, and here they are. There's a pile of stones down the bottom, not all there, some have been taken away. You can see where the pavement was damaged by the weight of them. There's the stones that you can see that were part of the temple, every one of them cast down, so that if you go there now, all you can find is a few depressions in the bedrock which show where those stones had been laid. And the Bible goes on, it shows we want to know about crucifixion. There's a nail through a heel bone of someone in a private tomb. So we know that people who were crucified could be buried by friends or family in an ordinary tomb somewhere nearby where they had been killed. And there's a picture of the nail through someone's heel. They were nailed to a cross. Of course, we know what the tomb of Jesus was like. There, a tomb like it. The body would be put inside, and a great big stone, this one must weigh about 3 tons, would be rolled across the entrance. So again, everything that is there in the gospel, we have something that matches it in the archaeology. And the point is that the Bible, or the Gospels anyway, are exactly accurate in their description of what was going on. So let's just summarize what we've seen. First of all, the New Testament contains significant claims to be written by eyewitnesses, to contain eyewitness accounts. We can test those claims by checking descriptions in the Gospels against archaeological finds. Of course, some archaeology doesn't have anything in the Bible that's about it, and sometimes there are things that are mentioned in the Gospels where no one's dug that bit up yet. But where the two coincide, we know that the archaeological record exactly matches what's in the Gospels. And as a result, we can be confident that the Gospels contain an accurate record of what Jesus said and what Jesus did. And that means that when we read the Gospels, we're finding out about Jesus. Well, I hope you're going to look at some of the other video presentations in this channel, because they contain a lot of evidence about Jesus, about God, about the Gospels, and about the Bible in general. So keep going, subscribe to the channel, look at the other videos on it, and come and look at the Gospel online website.